Welcome back to Truth Hurts, where we expose corrupt politicians and lying corporate media. I'm Jake Duesenberg, your host, broadcasting live from Roseville, Minnesota, in the belly of the beast, the liberal zombie apocalypse in Minneapolis and St. Paul. Our sponsor today is Alpine Chemistry in the great city of St. Cloud, Minnesota, which is outside of the liberal zombie apocalypse, just for those people that don't want to come into the city. If you're looking for a good chemistry shop outside of the Twin Cities, there's no better place than Alpine Chemistry in St. Cloud. Also brought to you by Elite Guardian. MN.com. If you're looking for a concealed carry course, we have one coming up on February 16th. So that's a Monday evening. I think there's a couple spots left. So go to EliteGuardianMN.com. I don't want to waste a lot of time up front. If you want to interrupt me at any time today, hit that Rumble Rant button or Super Chats on YouTube. And I'll read your question live. I'll try to get to a lot of them today, but quite frankly, I don't want to waste much time. I got my good friend Dave Bannon for an hour. He's the host of a ton of content on Liberty Vault, and I just got to share this real quick before I bring him on. I think it's a fantastic channel, and I would highly encourage all you guys to go over there right now and check it out here. I'm just going to pull this up 1 second. This is on YouTube, so it's at Liberty-Vault. This is what it looks like. He's killing it, 372,000 subs, and you can just see he's doing tons of videos a day. And for those people that don't do this stuff, you probably don't realize how difficult that is. It's incredibly difficult. Oh, I wasn't sharing my screen. I'm sorry, guys. There we go. It's right there. So 372,000 subs, Liberty Vault, great content. He's all over the Epstein files. And I thought no one better to bring onto the show than my good friend Dave Benner. And I say good friend, we've known each other since college days at UW Falls, the reigning Division III football champions.
Yeah. Hey, thanks for having me, man. I just want to be clear. I'm all over the Epstein files, but I'm not in the Epstein files. Just want to make that distinction here, by the way. But thanks for having me on, Jake. It's a pleasure.
Never even crossed my mind when I said that. Okay. So I'm glad we're making light of the situation up front. You and I we've been chatting a lot lately. I'm a big consumer of your channel. You actually have a membership site. You get membership only content. Plus, it's supporting people like you, and this is what you do full time now, which is crazy. And I love it, man, because I think good voices out there, reasoned voices, people that like on this show. We're not afraid to go after both sides. We don't live in this like paradigm where we have team red, team blue. Okay. And I don't think there's an issue better to expose than the Epstein files when it comes to not playing partisan politics. So we just got a trove of 3 million files. And this is thanks to Thomas Massie and Ro Khanna's bill. Is that correct?
Yeah, their discharge petition. And let's be clear, Lauren Boebert and Nancy Mace, a lot of people in the dominant Republican Party that did push back against Trump deserve that credit too. But it is only because of their indignified response to this, which I think is a cover up, that we got even this. And it's not perfect. There's lots of redactions. Thomas Massie is pushing against the DOJ to get some of those removed. We can talk about that.
Yep.
But yeah, they deserve, credit for this. And it is why we have what we do have right now. Now, one thing I'll add, though, is the DOJ in its own report, and the Washington Post has reported this, is sitting on 2 million additional docs that are just totally classified and we'll never see. So there's some wild stuff that's come out. Just imagine on what they're sitting on.
Okay, no, because I come from the classified, defense area of our federal government, being a former not intelligence officer, but served some time in the G2, what they call it, division headquarters, but as an infantry officer with the top secret clearance. What that means when you say classified means the release of that information could cause grave danger to the United States. Could the release of Epstein files really cause grave danger to the United States?
Well, I think a lot of what we've even seen that hasn't been so-called classified has at least been an embarrassment, especially to, some of the elite people in the business world and the political world that surrounded Epstein. And we know that because of how they've redacted.
So embarrassment equals grave danger. Got it.
Well, it doesn't even make sense when at one point Mike Johnson said, we can't allow this discharge petition to come out unamended because it will throw the entire justice system into question. He's actually letting the mask drop a little bit, because what could throw the United States national security or justice system into question by divulging the truth about a potential child sex trafficking ring, which they don't even go that far. They just say this is Epstein and Maxwell essentially acting alone. What implications does that have? Well, a lot of it is, proven and documented ties to Israel, which
Yeah.
is an embarrassment when you call them America's greatest ally and seem to jump to their wars that they want above anything else. So there's many things involved in that.
Yeah. Okay. So I think it's pretty obvious at this point why this is so important, and a lot of people have opined on this issue. I don't know if we have to rehash that, and I've had you on the show. Actually, we discussed it. I think what's real important is let's get into the nuts and bolts of this newest release. So, let's do this. Most of my audience is on the conservative side. So let's start with Bill Gates. And then we're gonna go somewhere where I don't know if a lot of people are aware of it, and it's a close Trump ally. But let's start with Bill Gates. What's the newest stuff on Bill Gates? I mean, we knew he had a close relationship with Jeffrey Epstein, but some recent stuff came up and raised some eyebrows.
Well, I think it's one of the wildest avenues of this release. It's that Epstein drafted an email. Now, he sent this to himself, but it was formatted in a way where he says at the top of the body, Bill, comma, and then he proceeds to tell a tale of a time that Bill Gates contracted an STD from Russians. Now, it doesn't say whether they were girls or not, who knows, but apparently he contracted this STD and then was entertaining the prospect of getting medication to Melinda Gates such that she wouldn't be infected by this venereal disease. Now, a lot of people have gone down the blackmail rabbit hole when it comes to Epstein a long time, thinking that, yeah, Epstein bent people to his will by compromising materials such as this. Now, it's not exactly a smoking gun, but it's at least circumstantial evidence that Epstein was at least documenting and collecting data that he might use in the future for leverage over Bill Gates. So it's interesting. Both Gates and Melinda Gates have responded to this. Melinda Gates's response, I think, is the most interesting because not only doesn't she say flatly that's inaccurate, she just says, "Well, those are a few moments of my years of my life that I'd like to forget," and things like that. So that's what you get out of the Bill Gates situation.
Well, and it seems like it was the reason for the divorce, right? I mean, is that just something that we've insinuated from what she said, or was she just right out and open about it? I can't remember.
Details on that are murky. I think retroactively, Melinda Gates has gone back and said, "Hey, it's because of Epstein's associations with Bill Gates that is, one of the reasons for the schism in our marriage." I don't know if that's really substantiated. Like she was saying that at the time. I kind of doubt that. A lot of people are trying to boost themselves up by saying retroactive things that weren't necessarily true. Howard Lutnick famously said that. We could talk about that
We're
later.
gonna talk about that.
Sure, sure.
Yeah, and he was testifying this morning. I don't know if you had a chance to did you have a chance to see any of it?
I didn't, but I did
Okay.
see your quote where he admits to having
Yes.
lunch.
Yes. Oh, I
You
do want
know,
your reaction on that.
yeah,
But that wasn't the close ally to Trump that I was talking about.
yeah.
I was
I think I know who it is,
I'm
but
talking
yeah,
about
yeah.
Steve
There's a few
Bannon.
in there. Yeah.
Yes, and I really want to discuss this because so I was puzzled, and I've said this on my show many times. Donald Trump lost me, I think, pretty much for good when it came to what he did against the Epstein file. Going so far as to just call it a complete Democrat hoax, but basically his actions speak louder than anything. He was covering it, and to this day, still going after Thomas Massie because of what Thomas Massie did to try to get the Epstein files to the people, what we wanted, right? So it was puzzled because I'm like, I never really believed that Donald Trump was some sicko, that he was really a co-conspirator in this whole ring or anything like that. And then a lot of us had to start believing that there's a chance he was, right? And then you see this recent release and you're like, oh, yeah, there are some people real close to Trump that are implicated, and one being Steve Bannon. And so in that case, what do we know about Steve Bannon's relationship with Jeffrey Epstein?
Wow, where to start? So Bannon maintained a long correspondence with Epstein even until the very last months before his arrest and then subsequent mysterious death, right? Whatever you attribute that to. And it seems to be the case that in these email disclosures, it wasn't only that they were friends, but that Steve Bannon was maintaining correspondence to help Epstein kind of revive his reputation after the first sexual conviction in which he had 40 plus witnesses against against him, but Alex Acosta gave him a sweetheart deal that involved, among other things, a 6 day a week, 12-hour a day work release program. He carved out a part of the sheriff's department and had
Mm,
access to many of his properties to leave at long lengths of the day. And Alex Acosta said, hey, I was told to lay off of Epstein, that he was intelligence. Well, Bannon, after word got out, and there was some reporting on this in 2008, it got out. Bannon joined on with Epstein in an attempt to like seriously try to, scrape websites from this information pertaining to his conviction.
mm,
Also, lots of other things with Bannon. The one most interesting to me is that if you go on jmail.world, which is a replication of Epstein's emails in a kind of digestible Gmail client, like it looks like you're logged into his account, you can see at one point that Bannon is implying that Epstein might have blackmail material on both Jerome Powell, the current Fed chair, and Steve Mnuchin, who was the Treasury
yep.
Secretary in Trump's first term, because he literally says in one of the email exchanges, can you get rid of Powell and Mnuchin for real? Like he's actually asking him if he has the dangerous goods on these two people. At that time, he was on the outs of the Trump administration. I think he was kicked off the National Security Council by that point. So
Are you talking about Bannon?
yeah, so
Okay.
that is what we
Bannon
know
still
about Bannon.
Bannon still has some bit of a close relationship with Trump, I believe. Isn't that
I
correct?
think so. I don't think so in an official
Not
capacity, but he's
official, right?
certainly a supporter. Plus, he's sitting on at least 15 hours of a documentary he was planning to make on Epstein, 2 hours of which have leaked in these disclosures, but we don't have the rest. And it seems like no one asks him about this. Or if they do, they don't record it under his permission and say, why are you sitting on all this other recording?
Well, and also, I mean, the fact that that was released in this trove of 3 million files means the Justice Department had it, right?
Yeah, I think they were privy to at least part of it. I don't know that we have all 15 hours, but here's the thing again, the DOJ is flagging 2 million of those total docs that add up to something like 5.5 million as national security risks. It's, potential that some of that footage is in that for whatever reason, and that could explain it. I'm not sure about that. I don't think that's conclusive, but it could be that. But either way, again, Bannon doesn't exactly say like why I'm withholding this footage at this point. And he's under no obligation to. We have property rights too, but I don't think he's provided like a reason either. So
So what do you think's going on here? I mean, is Bannon a sicko? Is he leveraging this relationship with Jeffrey Epstein because it will help propel him to other aspects of life? I mean, obviously at this point, he's got an association with Trump, so he's kind of made it, but at the same point, he was on the outs of, as you mentioned, with the Trump, officially in the Trump capacity. Is he trying to leverage this for other things? What do you think is behind this?
I don't think that there's an absolute conclusive answer to this question, Jake. But if you ask me, who's read a lot of these exchanges, and you can read, there's hundreds of them between the two, I believe, in Jmail and other documents pertaining to this. I think that Bannon, recognized early on what Epstein was in terms
Mhm.
of nexus among very prominent people that he could influence, he could gain business relationships with, he could wield power in ways that you and me couldn't just through this network.
Mhm.
And that is, I think, why he viewed Epstein as valuable. I think it kind of even comes out a little bit in that interview where I don't know if you watched it, but constantly in
Mhm.
that 2 hour interview, he keeps inserting stuff like, you're so brilliant, you're so great
Yep.
at this investment stuff, you're such a great financial mind. Like he's even boosting his ego, I think, to like play to that side of Epstein and draw closer to him. It seems like he did that in some emails too. So that's my gut on Bannon. I can't say for sure, and I don't want this to be mistaken as, yeah, this is absolutely conclusive, but I think that's what Bannon looked at Epstein as.
Okay, and I think it's important to say that with Steve Bannon, like he knew who Jeffrey Epstein was in terms of Epstein's criminal activity. A convicted. Let me think here. What was the conviction in 2006? Because he got a sweetheart deal, so he pled. So there wasn't a conviction. He pled.
It was a conviction based upon a plea deal.
Okay, and that what? Do you remember what that was
Uh,
for? Was it trafficking or did?
and I don't remember the technicalities, but it was, sexual exploitation of minors.
And it was pretty well known, I think, at that point, who he
It
was.
wasn't among like laymen, but it was out there
Right.
in the news. There was some coverage of it, and especially prominent people who keep people beside them as PR agents to be like, yeah, you should never talk to this guy because of this. That would have been, in the frame of reference to some of this stuff. That's why I don't, just buy into what Peter Thiel said, for instance, on Joe Rogan's show when he's saying, like, I didn't know about the convictions that it was this sick. I thought they were exaggerated, etc. It's like all this information's really was out there
Yeah.
actually for billionaires that would care to research it when determining who to meet with, so.
Right. Yeah, you would think they'd have the due diligence to do that kind of stuff. Okay, let's get into Howard Lutnick. That's the Commerce Secretary for Trump right now as we speak. And I know I'm going to play the clip here, but tell us a little bit about Howard Lutnick and how he shows up in these files.
Okay, so Howard Lutnick, interesting guy. He ran a firm in Manhattan. He was the next door neighbor, literally, of Jeffrey Epstein. Those two maintained a close personal relationship. If you remember, Lutnick, back from like the 9/11 days, he took a sick day on 9/11. Rarely doing that. I'm not trying to raise conspiracy theories. I don't know, if there's anything to that, but he didn't go into the Twin Towers when they were destroyed. But he maintained a close personal friendship with Epstein. Now, he's on sworn testimony saying that in 2005, I broke all connections with Epstein. Why? He said he walked into his Manhattan residence once, was chumming around with Epstein, and found that he had a massage table in just a random room. And he said that was the reason that I conferred with my wife. We never want to talk to this guy again. But the email disclosures show that as of 2012, not only was he talking, not did he break contact with Epstein, he was planning to bring his entire family to meet up with Epstein in the Caribbean at some point, raising no reservations at that point about the massage table. Now, I think he's admitted that today, but this shows, complete lying on behalf of the Commerce Secretary. There's no other way to say it.
Okay, well, let's play the clip here. I've got it. This is Howard Lutnick. It just happened here this morning.
I think you understand the root of concern here. It's the way you described very emphatically your first encounter with him in his apartment, said you were disgusted, would never have any contact with him again. Did you, in fact, make the visit to Jeffrey Epstein's private island?
I did have lunch with him as I was on a boat going across on a family vacation. My wife was with me, as were my 4 children and nannies. I had another couple they were there as well with their children, and we had lunch on the island. That is true, for an hour, and we left with all of my children, with my nannies and my wife, all together. We were on family vacation. We were not apart. To suggest there was anything untoward about that in 2012, I don't recall why we did it, but
Mr. Secretary, again, as I said, there's not an indication that you yourself engaged in any wrongdoing with Jeffrey Epstein. It's the fact that you believe that you misled the country and the Congress based on your earlier statements, suggesting that you cut off all contact when in fact you had not.
Okay, and I hate to have like the deliverer of this thing be a Democrat.
Yeah, I know, but he's right. That's the right thing to say.
No, but this is the problem, and we say this all the time on the show. We call the show "The Truth Hurts" because what you're getting here is at least what we believe to be the truth. We're not telling you a lie. I mean, we get stuff wrong. We'll try to correct that. But this is the problem with lying: is well, why would anyone believe you now, right?
Yeah, exactly right. Like, why would you lie about that? There's no smoking gun that he was involved in Epstein's nefarious crimes against children. Maybe that does exist somewhere. We haven't seen that. But the fact that he lied about this is pretty telling. Like, why would you lie? Why did you think it was beneficial to lie? Those are the sorts of questions that I would push back with. And yeah, it's significant.
Okay, so one thing that kind of crossed my mind, and I'm just so busy doing stuff and covering a lot of things in Minnesota, and that's why once again I'm just going to put a shameless plug for your channel. Go to Liberty Vault. I mean, he's breaking apart this stuff on multiple times a day. I find your videos to be very easy to follow, and they're short enough for people. So it's at Liberty-Vault on YouTube. It won't be hard to find it. So I'm going to show some clips because we're going to talk about Dan Bongino. We're going to talk about Kash Patel. And this isn't just a Trump hating thing. I see the Trump universe online and some of the fake MAGA promoters, oh, well, look, Trump was referring Epstein to the police back in whatever, and they're like, oh, see, he's vindicated. And I'm just like, but the guy was rejecting and putting up roadblocks to actually exposing the Epstein files. And all we got from his administration was lie, lie, lie. I mean, this is why I really believe Trump lost me on this, is because I can't stand the lies. And one of the big lies, and you're going to hear Kash Patel and Dan Bongino say it, I'm going to show some clips, is they have gone through the files, or they've gone through most of them. Benner, they've gone through most. We just got this download, a week ago? And there's files before that too, right? This is like 3 million. No one can even possibly go through these things unless they dedicate a full-time job for months, right?
Yeah, totally. It takes a lot of research, and a lot of people are leveraging AI to sift through this stuff. You have multiple eyes on many different avenues. Some people specializing, like, say, the labor market in just certain aspects of this and becoming, more proficient in that. They couldn't have drawn the conclusion, for instance, that Epstein killed himself, and I'm 100% sure, like Kash Patel just told Brett Baer, for instance.
We're going to get into that one.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's start with this is Kash Patel in a Senate committee, and this is referencing looking at the file. So let's play this here real quick. Sorry about that.
Ask you about the Epstein files. Have you seen the Epstein files?
I have not reviewed the entirety of it myself, but a good amount.
Good amount.
Would it be fair to say that Mr. Epstein trafficked young women, including, in some instances, minors, for sex to himself?
That was specifically the allegations in the 2018 indictment in the Southern District of New York.
Who else did he traffic these young women to?
In terms of what the investigation, again, going back to 2008, Mr. Acosta, who limited the investigation and limited the search warrants and limited the parameters of the investigation, the only thing we are able to speak to publicly, because he was given a non-prosecution agreement by Mr. Acosta, is that first time period from, I believe, don't quote me on this, 97 to 2001-ish. And then when the Trump administration courageously reopened it.
Excuse me for interrupting, but I'm going to run out of time. You've seen most of the files. Who, if anyone, did Epstein traffic these young women to besides himself?
Himself. There is no credible information. None. If there were, I would bring the case yesterday that he trafficked to other individuals. And the information we have, again, is limited.
Okay, so obviously we're going to expose, how that doesn't seem to be true at all. I think it's very important to clarify this with people. And I hear this often. I think Joe Rogan says this, is like, well, Ghislaine Maxwell's in prison for trafficking to no one. No, she's actually in prison because the whole case was she trafficked them only to Jeffrey Epstein.
Yeah.
And that was the case they were building against Jeffrey Epstein before he died, died. Went down that conspiracy this weekend, by the way.
Yeah.
And so is that true? I mean, at this point with the file release, is that true that the FBI has no other co-conspirators?
No, in fact, the documents that they released to the public contain facts that FBI agents themselves were entertaining the co-conspirator angle, with as many as 10 co-conspirators, including at least Jean-Luc Brunel and Les Wexner. You're displaying a document which was recently unredacted and shows, in fact, Wexner was one of those. Now, here's the thing. A lot of Trump supporters especially will say stuff like, well, yeah, that was early on in the investigation, and later on the FBI determined that there wasn't any co-conspirators. But their actions and, things that they've said belie that. For instance, they were talking about an FBI agent in New York. We have this email in the release, talked about seeking out Les Wexner for testimony to a grand jury about Epstein's crimes. But they stopped that investigation. It seems like the moment of Epstein's death, they no longer tried to get him. It sounds like he's going to actually testify to a congressional committee on February 18th, but they didn't even seek him out. So how could they have concluded that there were no co-conspirators when you're not even talking to the guy that you said at one point we're going to talk to as a possible co-conspirator? So even, the most basic facts belie that. There's other things too, like correspondence between Epstein and, guess what, name redacted, saying stuff like your littlest girl was a little naughty. That is at least eyebrow raising that,
Right.
trafficking went beyond Epstein. And they're still saying like there's nothing to see here. It's just so absurd.
Okay, so explain to people what the relationship is with Lex Wexner, because this isn't just some name on a document. I mean, this is like the source of wealth for him, right?
Totally. Those that research this case deeply know all about Les Wexner. Maybe layman wouldn't, but Les Wexner is probably the biggest benefactor of Jeffrey Epstein. He is the owner of L Brands, which includes Abercrombie and Fitch, Victoria's Secret, I think Bath and Beauty Works, and things like that, all under this L Brands umbrella. Well, Epstein met him in the 1980s, and in 1991, inexplicably, Les Wexner signs over power of attorney to Epstein to allow him to basically take loans out in his name, contract debts, kind of run his organization, when Wexner's business associates were saying, "Hey boss, who the hell is this guy?" Now there are some accounts that thought at the time that it might be Les Wexner's boyfriend and they might have a sexual relationship. But what we do know is that Epstein got amazing amounts of money from Wexner, including a $77 million mansion, the most valuable mansion in Manhattan, right next door to Howard Lutnick, by the way, through Wexner. So he's very closely associated with them. There's lots of rumors. And frankly, we don't really know that much about his standpoint on this because he's never been interviewed by authorities. Imagine that.
Yeah, I mean, it just seems like that's so common sense that you would interview this guy, especially the close relationship over time, and then the fact that he was at least at one point being pursued. Okay, so you brought up something, and I didn't know if I wanted to go down this road, but I talked about in my video yesterday. Pizzagate. Can we do that? Can we do Pizzagate? Okay,
Yeah,
good. 'Cause
we can talk about that.
okay, because that one's really goofy, and it, so the reason that people are talking about Pizzagate again, if you remember the conspiracy from like 10 years ago, is because there were these weird words of pizza and often used with grape soda, which most people would assume is a code word. And why would you use a code word if you're not trafficking children to other people, right? Like, what would be the point in a code word? What do you know about the pizza in these releases? The word, sorry, use of the word.
Try to be succinct. So back then, what happened was John Podesta's emails were leaked, I think by the courageous journalist Julian Assange, by the way, in WikiLeaks. And a lot of people took note that in several of these emails, it did have references to like pizza and hot dogs and grape soda. And from that, a lot of conspiracies were extrapolated from, stuff that this was just code to, the most extreme forms of Pizzagate, where they said like, Comet Pizza was kind of like a front for a child sex trafficking operation. That didn't really pan out, but they did speak in this coded language. Now, here's why that's significant. Not only do the Epstein disclosures show not only Epstein, but people close to him talking in this code, using the term pizza and grape soda, that it doesn't seem to mean what it's actually said as, and in an implied reference to something else, which could be child sex trafficking. But here's the other part a lot of people are missing, Jake, about this, is the FBI in two separate cases have acknowledged that child sexual offenders have used this terminology, pizza, to refer to their CSAM. I won't explain what that is for fear that we get banned, or sexual exploits against children. In the Harnden case in Houston, a man was captured and questioned and investigated by the FBI that used pizza in this way. And then in another case in Idaho, where a guy named Hornoff used pizza to refer to these exploits in the same way. So it does seem like there actually was something to at least the base level Pizzagate claims that this is coded language. Potentially, we don't know if it extends into Epstein. There's some eyebrows and it's worth investigating, but I think that this is like at least a compelling angle.
Well, why would you say that? We don't know if it goes into Epstein, because he's obviously, everyone would believe. I mean, obviously he died before being convicted, ultimately, but that's what they were investigating for, and that's what he was being indicted for, was child sex trafficking. Or sorry, I guess for him, yeah, I guess trafficking too would have been a charge, but that he was the one that was, I guess, raping these.
That's not
minors.
under question. What I'm saying is, like, the references he used to pizza and grape soda and references some of his associates used. I don't think there's a smoking gun to say that's for sure what they meant,
Yeah.
but they do use the language in a way that it's possible and, you know, very, very potentially so.
That's
all
right.
I'm
You and me, we always have been emailing about pizza. That's so common. Talk about emails.
Well, I think Tucker interviewed Ian Carroll, and they just said, well, if we want pizza, we just order it. We don't talk about it in email as if it's some sort of weird, like, conclusion to a story. You know what I mean?
And I watched that interview too, and it's like, aren't these guys health nuts? Like, wasn't he one guy taking care of his body? It's like, first of all, adult men talk about drinking beer with pizza. They don't talk, who even says that? Grape soda? Not that I have anything against grape soda. It sounds, grape soda is delicious. It's just that I've never even heard anyone use that term like for pizza. Maybe it's a New York thing, but I don't think it's a New York thing, right?
Yeah, I mean, just so many. Jake, the key thing is, like, so many people have been smeared as conspiracy theorists on Pizzagate over this, but it actually seems like there's at least credence to some of the base level claims here, and more information seems to support that, including the FBI on those two cases, right? So,
okay. All right, I want to throw another one at you here. This is Cash and Dan Bongino, and Dan Bongino obviously now has left the administration and is going back into media.
He's been reassigned. Let's just be real.
He's been reassigned. There you go.
They're like, you do a better service doing this than being the deputy director. I'm sorry, I'll stop.
All right, this is with Maria Bartiromo, whatever her name is. Maria.
You said Jeffrey Epstein committed suicide. People don't believe it.
Well, I mean, listen, they have a right to their opinion, but as someone who has worked as a public defender, as a prosecutor, who's been in that prison system, who's been in the Metropolitan Detention Center, who's been in segregated housing, you know a suicide when you see one, and that's what that was.
He killed himself. You want me to? I've seen the whole file. He killed himself.
Okay, now he's seen the whole file, Dave. Not like Cash Patel has read most of it. He's seen. Guys, you know how ridiculous this sounds. He's seen the whole file. We have AI scrubbing through this 3 million docs plus the ones that we haven't got. No one's even seen a fraction of the file, but he's seen the whole file. This is from CBS News from 5 days ago. Who entered Epstein's jail tier the night of his death? Newly released video logs appear to contradict official accounts. Department of Justice documents show that investigators reviewing surveillance footage from the night of Jeffrey Epstein's death observed an orange-colored shape moving up a staircase toward the isolated locked tier where his cell was located approximately 10:39 p.m. on August 9th, 2019. That entry in an observation log of the video from the Metropolitan Correction Center appears to suggest something previously unreported by authorities. A flash of orange looks to be going up the L tier stairs, could possibly be an inmate escorted up to that tier, end quote. It also appears, according to FBI memorandum, that reviews by investigators led to disparate conclusions by the FBI and those examining the same video from the Department of Justice Office of Inspector General. The FBI log describes the fuzzy images as possibly an inmate. You can see right there, 1039. The Inspector General logs it as an officer carrying orange, quote, linen or bedding, noting it in their final report as an unidentified CO, correction officer. The final report by the Inspector General stated at approximately 10:39, an unidentified CO appeared to walk up the L tier stairway and then it reappeared within the view of the camera at 10:41. The cameras that were working, right? I think this is showing right here, this video off the side.
Yeah, you're pointing right to where they would have walked up until a staircase into what they call the cell tier, yes.
Okay. Official reports state that Epstein died by suicide sometime before 6:30 a.m. when his by the way, August 10th, maybe you know where I'm going with that one. By suicide sometime before 6:30 a.m. when his body was discovered by a corrections officer delivering his breakfast. No official time of death was determined. In recent months, there have been questions about the work of investigators probing the circumstance of his death, although the people that have seen all the files have concluded. In an in-depth analysis of surveillance video from the jail, CBS previously reported on the figure on the stairs and consulted independent video analysts who said the movement was more consistent with an inmate or someone wearing an orange prison uniform than a corrections officer. The new records raise more questions about activity near Epstein's tier late that evening. Official reviews of Epstein's death make no mention of the figure in orange, and later pronouncements from authorities, including the Attorney General at the time, Bill Barr, were that no one entered Epstein's housing tier the night of his death. Last summer, in an interview on Fox and Friends, then Deputy FBI Director Dan Bongino said, this is a quote, "There's video clear as day. He's the only person in there and the only person coming out. You can see it."
Well, they haven't showed us that, man. So, I mean, they're so certain that he killed himself and it's based on this case file, right? But we haven't seen 1% certainty when Kash Patel talks about 100% certainty that he killed himself. So not only do they cite this on the basis of the case file, they want us to believe, I guess, that that's too classified to put out there on the basis that they're making that judgment. It just doesn't withstand basic scrutiny, Jake. And we can talk about the dating on that doc if you
Okay,
want.
you knew where I was going with that. So there is a document that was released that showed a memorandum that was produced, and there's the question I don't know is when was it produced? You know, people are alleging it was produced before his death because it was dated August 9th, even though Epstein died on August 10th. What do you have to say about that?
Well, we don't know just based on what was stamped on that document that it was produced beforehand or afterhand. But indeed, there is a DOJ doc that said Epstein has, been found dead in his cell on August 9th, which was a Friday. It says the name Friday there too, showing that this wasn't just a mere discrepancy between people forgetting what day of the week it was and just saying the wrong number. It did say Friday, August 9th. Now, it's not necessarily, again, a smoking gun. This could have been a clerical error, but it at least is circumstantial, avenue here to explore, to at least raise our eyebrows and ask the DOJ, like, can you show when that was produced? Maybe it would behoove them to show when that was produced if they want to keep maintaining that there's nothing to see here. Also, Jake, in tandem with this, there's another account by the coroner that seems to have been a little bit confused about the fact that they received the body on I believe the 10th, and typically in a situation like this they would have expected to receive the body on the 11th. Now again, that's not a smoking gun for sure that this wasn't a clerical error, but at least something worth exploring when you have a DOJ doc conflicting with the prevailing narrative that they're going with here.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, you kind of cut out there, so I'm confused on what you're trying to say here. The coroner usually wouldn't get a body for another day. Is that what you're saying?
There is a document that seems to indicate that the coroner was confused as to why they got the body on the 10th, whereas they would have expected to get the body a day after a deceased individual on the 11th, and that has raised some questions too. Again, I'm not. Yeah,
you might not be an expert on this, but is that just protocol? Like you wouldn't, what would happen to a body?
I'm definitely not an expert on it.
Okay.
I think that the document itself just alludes to their confusion on this, and this is outside of my spectrum of expertise.
Okay, well, I do know one thing that you're an expertise on. Nooses found in the confined spaces of jail cells. He's nodding his head, so he knows where I'm going with this. Do we have the official noose that he used?
Well, now they say that they don't have the noose, but when you look at the actual pictures from within his cell, and they did release some of those pictures, you can actually see two nooses, one down by the floor on the right, and one that was attached to, I think, the top level of a two-tiered bed, right? And, there's been two autopsies on his body, including one conducted by the defense, and the famous forensic pathologist, Michael Bannon, took a look at that corpse and said, hey, he has 3 bones broken in his body, and 2 of those bones don't typically break for someone that hangs themselves. So that's just another angle here in this entire mystery.
Well, are you going deep? You just said on that corpse.
Yeah.
Not Jeffrey Epstein's corpse.
I think that there's generic, a swap out. There was a 4chan post by a supposed guard by the name of Roberto Grijalva, who claimed that he believed that the body was swapped out late at night. Now, there's lots of different conflicting reports as to whether the FBI or the authorities have sought him out after that his name was identified and things like that. I don't know. Nothing else has come up from it than that, but there was a post about that, and it seems to have been linked to this guy that really did work there.
See, when I look at the odds of things, let's just take 3 different scenarios. One scenario is the official narrative that he committed suicide. Another scenario is that, somebody came into the cell and killed him. And then the other scenario is they staged, I mean, I guess in this case, maybe they brought in a person that was alive and then killed that person, and then Epstein left. He's a orange suit leaving. Um, so I would say that latter one's like 1%, which is crazy. I'm even that high. But the first one, the official narrative, I have at like maybe 10%. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Would you handicap it somewhere in that category? Area?
Like, I just don't buy that, the feds were so sure right away with Bill Barr, the son of Donald Barr, the guy that got Jeffrey Epstein his first job teaching at the Dalton School, by the way, shut down any potential to investigate a homicide. And just with all these different aspects to it that at least throw up question marks, red flags that we should explore, I would probably handicap it about that way. I have a hard time believing that the body was swapped, because it would require his brother kind of going along with it, the defense team, which by all accounts were actually in high spirits. They thought that they could get this guy off. It sounded like, on some of these things, and who can blame him? They got him off against the
Right.
in 2008. He seemed untouchable and elevated in an inorganic way throughout every part of his life, showing his possible connections to intelligence. So I think that handicapping is at least fair. I just think that there's too many things without like substantive, like real identifications and sightings. There was that Google AI that was put together with the watermark in the lower right and Hebrew language and gibberish claiming that he was in Israel, but that was AI. There's just too much going against that in my mind. Not saying like I'm 100% sure about that, because saying 100% like Cash Patel just opens you up to absurdity, I think.
Yeah, and that. It's just regular old citizen Dave Benner, but the FBI director doesn't apparently know that.
Yeah.
All right. I want to ask you like the other big things that came from this release, but I think it's important to just say this. It seems like there's new things every day, and it's leading headlines in the right places. Maybe not necessarily all the traditional media, but I mean, wouldn't we expect this for weeks still? Because everyone's scrubbing through it, and it's just so hard. Like, you can put AI on the task, but how would AI know exactly what to look for? Is that a fair assessment?
I think it totally is, man. Like, we literally have seen like new revelations and interesting angles every single day. If you're on X and Twitter and following some of this and some of the accounts that are really following this, you do see like new interesting things, every single day. 2 days ago, there was one that was really interesting to me involving sulfuric acid. I'll stop there. If you
No,
want.
go ahead. I'm very curious on that one.
Okay, so what's interesting about this is the very day that the feds reopened an investigation into Jeffrey Epstein in 2018. This was after a famous Miami Herald publication was printed out talking about Epstein and additional victims coming out and alleging crimes against Epstein. They printed this material in the Miami Herald. There was a reopening by the DOJ of the investigation into Epstein under Trump during his first term. And on that same day, I believe, don't quote me on this, I think it was December 10th, 2018, we have records showing that Epstein procured a work order to order 6 barrels of 6 barrels of 55 gallons of sulfuric acid. Now, sulfuric acid can, melt cartilage, melt flesh, and all sorts of different kind of metals. Actually, it's tough for it to wane away at like gold or some, harder metals. But we know it can, dismantle and destroy and dissolve evidence. But not only could it be pertaining to him wanting to get rid of evidence, whether, it was human material or not, it also maybe leads us to believe that, hey, he might have had a guy on the inside of the DOJ ordering this on the same day that they reopened the investigation. So I think that's an interesting one. Again, at least worth exploring.
Yeah, and I guess we just don't know, but at least it was in the possession of the DOJ, and that was never released prior to this date, right?
Correct. We never knew about this. We never knew about all sorts of this stuff. And, there's so many other angles with, Epstein and some of his collaborators, whatever you want to call them, people that maintain correspondence with him, talking about goyim, almost as if like
Mhm.
using that term to apply to non-Jews in a pejorative way. Like
Mhm.
it's really like verbal Jewish supremacy in a way that Maria Farmer, one of his first victims back in the 1990s, said he did this. But then there wasn't that much evidence from like interviews and documents and stuff that he really did talk that way and behave that way. But this release has shown a treasure trove
Interesting.
of material showing that
Ye
he was.
Yeah, I didn't know that. I didn't know that angle. So, the former, I remember seeing this in, what is his name? David Stern, the former NBA commissioner?
Right.
Yeah, apparently that was a term that was used, like they were gonna meet somewhere and he's like, "Wait down in the lobby," and he was like, "Oh, it's for the goyim," something like that. And then I've seen that there's references other places. So that kinda goes with what she said at one point, that
Yeah.
he kinda speaks in that fashion, huh?
Yeah, I think that's interesting. And again, it's not an angle being covered that much. Of
Not at all.
very few of these angles really are outside of the independent media, but it's at least worth noting because he didn't put that on display in terms of his public persona in like interviews and stuff like that, but it's all throughout the email exchanges.
What other big things, have caught your attention? And, I mean, honestly, we could do this weekly, and it's gonna be a whole full hour of a show because there's so much, but so from what we know from about the week that we've had to look through this, what has caught your attention?
Well, one thing, and I just talked to Jason Burmis about this in that 2 hour interview with Bannon. One of the things that Epstein reveals is that he got on board with the Trilateral Commission, and that's like a globalist organization among like very prominent entrepreneurs and business owners, etc. From David Rockefeller. He was a
Mhm.
famous senator involved in the Trilateral Commission. And it seems to be that many of the people involved in the Trilateral Commission, again, it's a globalist organization. I haven't studied it in depth. Some others have, but it's like akin to some of the interests that like the World Economic Forum have, the Council for Foreign Relations, etc. Like they're globalist mandates and interests, right? It
Mhm.
seems to be that that's where Epstein built a lot of his network. Very prominent people associated with that. In addition to what we've seen from him building a network from Les Wexner and people that were related to the Mega Group. The Mega Group is a group of Jewish billionaires that Les Wexner organized together that included people as prominent as Steven Spielberg that Epstein associated with, had them to his parties, got in business deals, and was this nexus point between powerful people not only in terms of like the sex trafficking but also the business world. So that's something that's really come to light, I think, lately too.
Okay, let's, talk a little bit more about, how this stuff all came to, the forefront. Let's see here. Let me just make sure I got the date right. I think this might be God, it's starting to get hard. This might not what is today? Today's the 10th? This might not even be the newest slam against Thomas Massie. But obviously Massie's, bill, um, brought this all to the forefront, and this is, Donald Trump tweeting out on the 2nd of February. "People are saying that Thomas Massie became a liberal because his new wife, blessed be their marriage, is supposedly a radical left flamethrower. This new union all went so fast that maybe he didn't know what he was getting into, but nevertheless, he is an absolutely terrible and unreliable Republican, perhaps a rhino, or maybe even worse. Ed Gallerine, or whatever his name is, a farmer and war hero, is running against Massey. He is a high quality. Okay, who the hell talks this way? Like, first of all, Massey has got to have one of the most impressive records voting conservatively. Certainly, what the MAGA platform was based on. But like, the guy if people don't understand, Massey's wife suddenly passed away. Was that last year or 2 years ago, 2024?
Years ago, I think. Yeah.
Right. They raised children that I think even are full grown. Maybe he's even a grandfather at this point. By all accounts I've seen, good wholesome family, loses his wife. A year and a half later gets married again, you know? Far be it from him to do that. By the way, Donald Trump's not the guy to be, slamming people for getting remarried.
Yeah.
Last I checked,
Especially when he was like a proven adulterer at part of it.
alleged, right?
Alleged. Yeah.
So, I think pretty much everyone believes he was, right? So, what the hell is going on here? Like, why is he coming at him with so much energy?
I just think it's so clear as day that Trump decided, for whatever reason, we can speculate on the reasons. It seems like some of them become clear upon examining these docs. He decided to bleed political capital for almost a year to keep this cover up facade going. With Pam Bondi in on it, Cash Patel in on it, Dan Bongino and the others saying, hey, it's a Democratic hoax. There's nothing to see here. It's boring. Pay attention to the flooding in Houston. And then True Socialing, like, you're not my real supporter if you still want answers here. But here's what he's doing, and here's why it's a misstep. He's treating Thomas Massie, someone popular with the American people, for pushing back against this, getting us more transparency than otherwise would have existed. He's treating him like he treated Elizabeth Warren. He was clowning Elizabeth Warren, and everyone laughed at it because, he forced her to like divulge her DNA test, and that made her look retarded. But it really is Trump that looks like the retard, forgive my French here, for being involved in this and for just maintaining and digging his heels in on this and really tanking his presidency in ways that he hasn't with his own base on other issues. Now, there is inflation, there's debt, there's all sorts of issues. There's not mass deportations. A lot of his base wanted that. But this is really damaging him, and I think it's setting things up for a Democratic retaking of the House. I don't think the Senate, but that's just my suspicion. So I just think it's backfiring on Trump.
We got a $5 Rumble rant from Brad Gantz. Says, if you focus on social media, it's easy to hate Trump. And that's a fair point. It does kind of breed that TDS, but I try to look at it from more an objectable standpoint. Like I just I sent this to you the other day. It was like Trump's talked about getting rid of the Department of Education, and they just funded it to the highest level ever. It's just like at some point, you gotta like stop telling us stuff that just is not true. Like, and when you lie to me, that's like you lose me. I can't trust anything you say when you lie to me. And I'm not talking about the size of the damn audience that or crowd that's on your inauguration. I don't give a shit about that. You're just boasting, right? I just want people to understand I'm not dealing with TDS. I'm not like saying I'm defending Trump's video truth on Friday that had the Obamas and ape, basically superimposed on apes. It was just like such an obvious thing what happened. He was screen recording and it just auto played the next video, and whoever posted it didn't like edit it. Like, right? Who's screen recorded something and you have to like go back and edit, and like everyone's blowing up and making this the biggest story on the planet.
Or the Super Bowl halftime show. Wow, the Epstein files are out there. Like that, those are distractions from this,
Right.
man. I can't say it enough. Matt Walsh, whatever you think about Matt Walsh, he just did a full show on the Super Bowl halftime when all these Epstein revelations are coming out. I'm sorry, that seems like a warped prioritization to me, but what do I know?
Well, I got a hot take. Both halftime shows sucked.
Yeah, I probably agree with that more than anything. So,
I want to see at least what Turning Point did. And I'm like, this is not good. But obviously the real one wasn't good either. So, God. I mean, listen, maybe we'll end on this better. I mean, obviously they're not creating the halftime shows for guys like us who are like legit really big football fans. I don't want to tell my Minnesota audience who your love and what team you own, but well, I just gave it away. What team you own, Mr. Shareholder of the Green Bay Packers. But like, if it's for me, you're gonna put Metallica at halftime, but it's always like people I don't really care to listen to. So they're bringing in a new audience, and in this case, like, God, they go political or quasi-political. It's like, jeez. So I can see why Turning Point did that, but the Turning Point one really wasn't good. I mean, like,
it's just like these red meat stories that are like, it's like vapor. They'll be here today and then gone tomorrow. But Epstein shows like a long-lasting criminal network that they kind of covered up, and it involved the most prominent people in the world, right? I just think like people can prioritize issues the way they want. I just think like this is more important than that stuff. That's all I'm saying.
Well, I mean, how is it that we were fine with totalitarian governments under the auspices that there's some kind of sickness going around and rights can just be suspended, and we're all not like demanding government immediately change its governance when it comes to emergency powers, or the fact that we notice we have less purchasing power of our dollar, like we can literally see it when we go to the grocery store or you're trying to buy a house, something like that. And, it's not like I'm some economic genius, correlating the depreciation of the dollar through the Fed's actions to why we have less money or our purchasing power is down. It's like that's like just law, economic law, that you can't deteriorate the value of the dollar and assume that the purchasing power will remain the same. And yet no one's like marching on the streets saying we need to end the Fed. I mean, you and
Yeah.
I are, but
Yeah, I wish more people were privy to that. So I think it behooves dissidents like us, like libertarians and people that care about individual rights, to link all of this insane, extravagant spending to that, because it's the reason that Trump has initiated like a $1.5 trillion Pentagon budget, that forces the central bank to print more fiat backed by nothing. It's an invisible tax, as Milton Friedman called it. That's taxation, but it's unlegislated taxation. And that ruins all of our lives just to fulfill like this boastful attitude and war posturing against Iran right now, or maybe other wars that he envisions with a unprecedented $1.5 trillion budget, when Biden's biggest one was 880 or so. Insane to me.
yeah, well, but that Bad Bunny performance was terrible, man. So
I didn't even see it, man, but I'll just trust
we should
you.
go
I
to the
was digging
second
through
hour now.
files.
Come on, Dave. Let's go to the second hour and talk about that.
Second hour subscriber special Bad Bunny breakdown reaction.
I'll
Let's
be like
go.
I'll be in my post show. I'll be like, where is everybody? I see it too. I'm like, reaction to the halftime show. I'm like, I don't even give a shit about what you have to say about
Dude,
that.
I bet some influencers did a full reaction to it.
Yes, they did.
Right?
Just you didn't see it. Better. All right. Well, keeping it real with you. Thank you so much. I know your time is precious, guys. You got to go over and check out his channel. It's called Liberty Vault. It's I don't know how much I should admit that I get a lot of my national news from it, at least on the subjects that the national news isn't covering. So yeah, Liberty Vault at Liberty-Vault. Yeah, you're just crushing it, man. Great videos, great content, very digestible. You do such a good job too. You keep the interest and the excitement into it. So yeah, man, just keep it up.
Hey, dude, thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be here. I really like the work you're doing in Minnesota. I left there about 8 years ago, but it was fun to be a part of that with you, and I appreciate your program and having me on. And thanks so much for talking about my channel.
Word. Take care, buddy.
Take care, man.
All right. I'm going to go into my post show, guys. If you want to be a premium insider, which helps support our show, you can go to on Rumble. You can click on join on the top, or you can go to truthhurtsnews.com. I'll be back on Thursday. I don't know if I have the topic yet on that. We're just trying to make a video a day. That's our goal right now. So 2 live shows, Tuesdays and Thursdays at 1:00, and then we do a video a day. Hopefully you're enjoying the content, trying to do this. It's a lot of work. I'll tell you what, I know what Benner does on a daily basis because he's producing about 4 videos. Do you know how insane that is? That is a full-time job, and most people couldn't even do that as a full-time job because it would require so much. I know you look at this video, you're like, it's 15 minutes. Geez, that's not that hard. It's like, that's like hours. And that doesn't even include the research that goes into it. And that's why I appreciate it. Like, I really wanted to talk about Epstein. I want to make sure that's a topic. I would never do this like show on Bad Bunny's, performance, but I wanted to talk about the important stuff. So that's why I wanted to bring Dave Benner on. All right, we're going to go to the post show. Thanks to Alpine Capturing, St. Cloud, and EliteGuardianMN.com for all the post show premium insiders. We'll see you in 30 seconds. For everyone else, we'll see you on Thursday. Take care. Bye-bye.